Colin is in Bergen in Norway. And Colin, you actually work as a remote vehicle operator for subs yourself, don't you?
That's correct, Julia. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Do you know what? When I said, look, call in if you happen to know when you're an expert in this field, I kind of said it tongue in cheek. Absolutely incredible for you to get in touch. What do you make of the chances of A, finding this sub, and B, getting these men out alive?
Okay, well, there's some big holes in this story because a little bit of background. If you work, I know I work in the oil and gas industry. And we send ROVs down from boats all the time, down to about 3,000 metres too. We always have at least one or two transponders on them, which is basically a little signalling device which pings the signal back to the surface for the boat to pick up so they can identify where you are and your water depth.
Yeah.
And these things, they're actually, you can hire them or buy them. And they're straight off the shelf. There's companies all over the world rent or sell these things. And they're very accessible. They're not that expensive. So from the life of me, I cannot understand how this sub has gone down there without a few of those attached.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, exactly. That's because look, we spoke to experts, former Navy commanders who are saying, look, they wouldn't dream of getting into this sort of this tin can effectively operated by a PlayStation module. I mean, when you see the pictures, are you shocked that this is a $250,000 trip?
Not really, because in the offshore industry, we do a lot of the same thing. We use controllers the same for a lot of equipment. And the idea of having a laptop standing by is if you have a failure on the laptop, you can plug another one that's all ready to go in. So I think there's a bit of redundancy there. I think that's why they do that. That's your question. I think if they were still around, we'd know that by now.
Really, because they went down at 4 a.m. They lost contact an hour and 45 minutes in. That was on the way to the ocean floor. I mean, again, that was Sunday morning. It's already Tuesday morning. We know that they've got up to 96 hours of air. So they're less than 48 hours of air now.
Yeah, but they'd have somehow, if they were still, I'm guessing, I'm hoping it's not the case. But if they were able to, they would be able to make contact. They would be sending a signal, like, say, these transponders. They're separated from the sub.
Yeah.
So they're battery operated, they hang on the side, so if the sub imploded, for example, the transponder wouldn't be affected, I should think. So that would still be able to send a signal.
Yeah.
And if that's not happening, there's some holes in this.
It doesn't make sense to you. Look, we were going to go to another guest after this. I'd like to keep you on the line. We're going to take Colin has stayed on the line. He's a caller in from Bergen in Norway. He's a remote-operated vehicle pilot who controls remote-operated vehicles on the sea floor. And he's called in. I did actually ask, didn't I, Colin? Oh, get in touch if you happen to be an expert in rescuing submarines. And amazingly, you were listening and you have called in. Colin, thank you for staying on the line. Look, you were saying that there's some holes in this. The key thing for you is that why they have lost contact with this submersible that disappeared early on Sunday morning, just an hour and 45 minutes after going down at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. Because you're saying, look, there should be, it's just routine, it's very cheap, it's very reliable, this sort of sonar pinger, and it shouldn't be affected by a power loss inside the sub.
Absolutely not. The whole idea is these things they're little round tubes about twice the size of a milk bottle, and they just strap onto the outside, and they're bulletproof, so they can send a signal. They last up to a week. So they should have had some of those on board. They really should.
Yeah, I mean, indeed. And this, it is very strange, isn't it? Look, we know there are 5 men on board. One of them is the teenage son of one of the other men on board. I mean, Hamish Harding is an explorer. We've got a Pakistani businessman, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman, teenager. Also, the CEO of OceanGate. They're the people who run the company that it provides this mission. That's Stockton Rush. Also, a 73-year-old French explorer, Paul-Henri Nargelet, believed to be the man piloting this mission. They paid $250,000 for this. This is a sort of the ultimate tourism. Other than going to going into outer space, this is the ultimate unknown and going to visit the wreck of the Titanic. You're somebody who operates remote operated vehicles. Looking at the pictures we've seen from the inside of this sub and knowing how this operates, would that be something you would be willing to do? Do you think this was an unreasonable, a silly, reckless risk for these men to be taking?
I guess so. I'm quite happy sitting on a boat with a cup of tea doing this, but it is a different world. Just on the point of the rescue we were talking about as well, Some of the subs I have worked on with the manipulators on the front, we could go down to that depth, no problem, hang on to it, and then because we go down on a winch with a big like crane cable through the umbilical, the fibre optic power umbilical, we could then winch this thing back to the surface. Now the problem is their location and mobilising a boat and a crew to actually do this. You've got absolutely no chance of having that effective in 90 hours, none at all.
So, yeah, that's certainly one of the issues, isn't it, that we are looking at, 96 hours of air. They went down at 4 a.m. We're looking at less than 48 hours, 4 a.m. on Sunday, 48 hours today. And we are looking at a huge, huge ocean, a very deep ocean. They really, it would appear, since losing contact with the sub, they appear not to know whether it's on the wreck, floating through the currents in the Atlantic Ocean, or back on the surface. But the best hope seems to be if it's on the surface. But even then, it's still a very slim hope of finding them.
On the surface, you would hope they would have had like a satellite pinger as well. So if they do come to the surface, they can be located. Because they're not going to come up at that depth. There's no way you're going to come up the same place as you go down, because the currents, especially on the Grand Banks, they're all over the place, and they change at different levels too. So you can be going north at one level, another 1,000 meters down, you're going west. So they have no... If they've lost all contact and they have no idea where they are, if they came to the surface, it could be random where they surfaced.
Indeed.
But again, like I say, that's another transponder they could have had. Straight to a satellite, and they could have been found by any passing vessel. This
seems to be very, very basic. Goodness knows what has happened. Really good to get your thoughts on this, Colin. Thank you so much for ringing in. He's in Bergen in Norway, and he's a remote operating vehicle pilot working vehicles exploring on the seafloor.